guys! Today we'll be recapping the manhwa How to Survive as the Devil's Daughter. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it helps us a lot. Enjoy! In a world where chaos reigns, peace is something one can only dream of. Thunderbolts crash and boulders fall from the sky like rain. On the ground, mothers are separated from children and survivors scramble to escape the destruction. On a clifftop stands a man in a blue cape, smiling at the destruction he has caused. The only one to stand against him is a woman with red hair. She looks exhausted, but no matter how tired she is, the woman strikes with all her might, determined to finish him. This is not the first time the two have faced each other. The girl, whose name is Bliss, has spent her entire life fighting him and his allies, and each time she has been beaten. Her opponents are only driven by one thing: the destruction fun, and enjoy toying with the lives of mortals like her. And no matter what she does, Bliss always loses. Until one day, when the cycle is broken and she wakes up on a cold street, laying in a basket. It's not long before one of her mortal enemies appears again. Bihan Wolf, a man whose face she could never forget. Except it looks like he's forgotten hers. And for good reason. Because Bliss has turned into a baby and wound up right at the devil's doorstep. You see, she's been using her powers to go back in time, regressing slowly through the ages to give her more chances to save the world. With every jump, she gets slightly younger, though this time, she's taken more like a leap and ended up as a baby in the hands of her rival. Whoops, I think you went a step too far, Bliss. Bihan brings her inside the mansion right away. I guess he can't be a total villain if he has enough heart to bring a newborn baby in from the streets. Actually, he seems pretty innocent and excited to show the butler Nick his new discovery. He wants to take the baby to his lord. Sir Bihan Wolf is one of the 5 loyal subordinates known as the Sword of the Black Sea. It's their master Bliss has been trying to get at all these years, so it's kind of ironic that he now wants to take her to see him. Though, I'm not sure what she's going to be able to do with those pudgy little fists of hers. Bliss is still trying to wrap her head around the whole baby thing. As anyone would be. I mean, what would you do if you suddenly woke up as a newborn? I'd be totally freaking out right now. And she kind of is. But she's also trying to figure out how to stay alive inside the heart of enemy territory. If she dies again, she'll come back even younger. If she comes back at all. So it's imperative that she blends in, at least until she's old enough to use her powers again. Luckily, Nick and Bihan are very easily charmed by her adorable behavior. Even just grabbing their fingers makes them fangirl over her. It's quite the contrast from her past lives, where Bihan loved to cause her as much pain as possible in their battles. What would he do if he knew the babbling baby in his arms was actually a time-traveling warrior sworn to the destruction of his clan? Which is a sentence I never thought I'd say out loud. Next, Bihan runs over to introduce baby Bliss to Warren Wolf, another Sword of the Black Sea, and a rather hunky one. Seriously, I know these are villains, but are they meant to be this attractive? In her previous life, Warren was the one who struck the final blow, but now, he's just as enamored by her charms as Bihan. He is the third one to make a comment on how closely she resembles their lord. Bliss ignored them until now, but when she spots herself in the mirror, she is horrified to discover that they're right. She's the spitting image of her sworn enemy, the Demon King, Andrian Lucas Brandt, who, as it happens, is just getting out of the bath. Quick question, why are all these demon lords being introduced in their towels? I mean, I'm not complaining, but it doesn't exactly make me want to hate them. The others all assume the baby must be his because, well, look at them. They're identical. But the Lord Lucas corrects them immediately and tells Bihan to throw the baby away. Yep, that sounds about right. That's more the demon lord I was expecting. Obviously, Bliss doesn't take the whole toss the baby to the streets thing very well, and gets mad. Except her way of getting mad is pretty much just reaching out for them with a load of gurgling baby noises. Wow, this is going to be a long 10 years. Somehow, her little goo goo gaga wins over the literal Demon King. After hugging her once, he decides to keep her for a little while longer, at least until he can figure out why her eyes are red. He names her Eleanor and hands her over to the mansion maids for safekeeping. After all the excitement and overwhelm of the evening, baby Bliss/Eleanor is exhausted, so they step back to give her a chance to nap. While the two of them are alone, one of the maids introduces herself as Marcia and lays by her side while she sleeps. All the maids seem very excited to have a little girl to dote on, especially since she's the first child to arrive and not be sent straight to the dormitory. From her memories, Bliss knows the dormitory used to serve as a home for orphans, who were then trained to fight for Lucas as human weapons. Those who didn't meet his standards were kicked out, or worse, killed. So it really is a blessing that she looks like the Duke. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened to her. Fast forward 1 week, and Bliss has settled into her new life on the Devil's estate. It's pretty dull, honestly. Her baby body doesn't allow her to do much except nap, and she's beginning to grow frustrated with all this laying around. She's been trying to summon one of her powers, a skill called Penetrating Gaze. It allows her to see far into the distance, even through walls, and has allowed her to learn a little more about the mansion and the way it works. But while trying to use it this time, she is interrupted by Warren, who comes to visit her in her cot. Bliss's first thought is that he's discovered her true identity. A man of his strength would only need a finger to kill her, so when he lowers his hand, Bliss tries to summon her power to bat him away. And fails. I mean, really fails. Like, she kind of just swats at him with a pathetic little grunt. Lucky for her, Warren seems satisfied. Probably because he was never going to kill her. He just wanted her to hold his hand again. For an order of demonic lords, these guys really are a bunch of softies. After dropping in on Bliss, Warren is walking through the corridors when he bumps into Luke, who forces him to admit where he's been. He seems heavily suspicious that this baby's arrival is some scheme concocted by someone named Kareha, and orders Warren to keep an eye on her until he has proof it's not a trap. Looks like Bliss hasn't been taken in quite as easily as she thought. Meanwhile, Bihan and Marcia have been playing with the baby and admiring how cute she is. On the inside, Bliss is thoroughly bored of them and really tired of having such a small and puny body. I guess after being a warrior, there would be nothing worse than losing all your strength. Next to visit the sweet baby Eleanor are two of the cruelest members of the Sword of the Black Sea, Barbacha and Michaela, who kind of come as a package deal. When they're not on the battlefield, finding more ways to be wicked and vicious to Bliss, they're kind of cute. At least Barbacha is. He finds the baby adorable and totally freaks out when he feels how soft her hand is. Michaela is the drier of the two and seems less entertained by Eleanor's cuteness. In fact, she's sharp enough to notice that she can understand what they're saying. She's so impressed that she even considers adopting her herself. Get in line, buddy. The Demon Duke already called dibs on this one. Despite her infatuation, Michaela also seems to suspect that she might be a spy sent by this mysterious Kareha figure. Bliss is kind of shocked to hear that they're already on her case, but before they can scrutinize her any further, another member of their order arrives. Custeel is their captain, and on the surface, he seems to be the calmest and most orderly one we met so far. But Bliss remembers the captain as a cunning general with a mind for war. It was his intellect that always stopped her from reaching Lucas in her past lives, and it's the same intelligence that threatens to expose her in this one. If anyone's going to discover her true identity, it's Custeel. But instead of suspecting her, or just straight up stabbing her, he gives her a chocolate. I mean, what else was he going to do? Bliss keeps thinking these guys are going to murder her on sight and forgetting that she's literally just a baby. I don't see how they could possibly figure out the truth. She's also easily swayed by sweets. After being given a chocolate, Bliss happily wanders into Custeel's arms and starts playing with his hair. The others are shocked at the sight. Anyone who would dare to touch the captain like that would normally be killed on sight. Bliss knows too how dangerous her actions are, but she can't control herself. This is the only way her tiny body knows how to communicate after all. I mean, what would you do in her position? All of a sudden, Marcia the maid rushes in and tries to stop Custeel from giving her sweets. Apparently, chocolate isn't good for babies, which is news to me. Custeel hands baby Eleanor back to Marcia and commends her for taking such good care of her. Although it's more of a threat than a compliment. Apparently, he too is suspicious that Bliss will someday grow up to harm their Duke, and warns Marcia that if that happens, she will also be held responsible. Yikes. I mean, they're not wrong to be suspicious, but can't a baby just be a baby? Damn. At least Marcia is on her side. The way her maid cares for her and protects her reminds Bliss of everything she missed out on in her past lives, and how much she craves a mother's love. After his visit, it seems Bliss's fears about Custeel have been confirmed. His allies didn't notice, but when the captain held the baby, he picked up on her energy. Castiel heads straight to Lucas's office and tells him the child has a talent for magic. If she is raised right, Eleanor could become the demon army's strongest weapon and even move the monarchy onto greater heights after he's gone. He even suggests renaming her to something that matches the level of her power. So what are they going to call her? Blaze? Destroyer? Clearly Eleanor has a significance of its own, so just leave it at that. While they're having this discussion, Bliss is dreaming of her past life, her original life, where she was happy with her lover, Edwin. Now, after so many regressions, he doesn't even know who she is, even though it's for his sake and his life that she fights so hard to keep the world from being destroyed. She wakes in tears, with the maids trying to figure out what happened. I guess that's one benefit to being a baby, right? Can't be so bad to have people pick you up and cuddle you when you cry. Plus, they basically shower her with compliments the whole time, telling her how pretty she looks even when crying. It's a sweet scene, until Lucas bursts into the bedroom and tells them to get back to work. He asks why there are so many maids for just one child, and they answer that a child of their lord needs more care than a normal baby. Whoops, now you really stepped in it. He quickly corrects them, telling them Eleanor is not his child, and makes them promise not to make the same mistake. Still overwhelmed by the trauma of her dream, Bliss can't help but burst into tears again. Marcia tries to hush her up, but it's too late. Lucas asks why she's crying, and when the poor maid says she doesn't know, he calls her useless and says she's bad at her job. Which seems kind of harsh. Babies cry for hundreds of reasons. How is she supposed to know? As he advances toward them, Bliss puts her little hands up to try and stop him, babbling her little baby language. As usual, it gets totally misconstrued. Marcia somehow thinks she's trying to call Lucas daddy, which he doesn't like at all. When he gets close, she whacks his hand again, and they interpret that as her asking to play. Wow, these people really don't understand babies at all. Are we sure she's fit to be a maid? Eventually, he grabs hold of her hand and tries to hold it gently. He almost seems like a child himself, trying to figure out how to handle someone that small. Seeing that he's curious, Marcia suggests he tries holding her, and the other maids encourage him, saying that a child needs a good relationship with a parent to be confident and happy. Which is all true, except these two aren't parent and child, they're sworn enemies. Suddenly, Castiel appears out of thin air to add some peer pressure and invite him to hug her. Eventually, he gives in and takes her, at which point Bliss does her best to have a total tantrum, trying to hit his chest and get free. The maids convince him that's a sign that she's happy, because of course they do. He hands her back to Marcia, having no idea that the little baby he held is actually planning his brutal, bloody murder the moment she has enough strength to pull it off. She falls asleep dreaming of the day, and misses the first and probably only smile Lord Lucas Brant has ever given in his life. Seriously, I didn't even know the muscles in his face worked. He hasn't made a single positive expression since the series started. Skip forward a week or two, and the day of a big meeting arrives at the estate of the Demon King. In the time that's passed, Lucas has become so enamored with his adoptive daughter that he even takes her to the meeting to sit on his lap, which seems a bit much to me. His council are also surprised, and who could blame them? Instead of going through the lengthy explanation of how she came to end up there, Lucas has just started telling people she's his child, because I guess it's just easier. Baby Bliss, meanwhile, is not making it easy for him. She keeps trying to get free, biting his hand and wriggling on his lap until she starts to catch the eye of his council members. Poor Lucas is under the delusion that the more she moves, the more she must love him, which, well look, all I'm gonna say is if she grows up and stabs him in the throat, then that's really on him. At this point, he should have seen the signs. Although, she does keep bursting into laughter because of how delusional he is, so that probably doesn't help. He's so enamored with her that he orders his council to call her Princess Eleanor from now on. She's winning hearts left and right, and all she's really doing is trying to tell everyone how much she hates them. It seems Baby Bliss can do no wrong, so for the meantime, it seems safe to assume they're not going to kill her. Not yet, anyway. The meeting finally starts, giving Bliss a chance to learn a little about enemy politics. But the first thing they want to discuss is the birthday of a Grand Princess Reina. As it turns out, Lucas is one duke of many under the control of the Emperor. Reina is the Emperor's only daughter, and as far as Bliss remembers, ultimately the reason for the kingdom's collapse. In the future, Lucas and Reina will be married, but Reina will end up cheating on Lucas. At this point in time, however, he's still trying to get close to her so that they can get more power with the royal family. but Lucas is distracted by his adoptive daughter, which annoys one of his more senior advisors, Sir Carden. He heavily disapproves of there being a baby at their council meeting, because apparently he's the only one with any sense around here. But Michaela and Castile just shoot him down and warn him not to go against the wishes of their duke. Really? All this over a toddler? Are these guys meant to be leaders? Bliss remembers Carden as a mastermind strategist who keeps Lucas safe from enemy attacks. So while having him removed from the picture would hurt the Duke, it would also put her in danger, at least while she's by his side. Sir Carden suddenly mentions Rohan's territory, an abandoned place located in the south of the continent where dragons roam free and the natural laws of the world don't exist. Carden suddenly declares that the Duke must go to Rohan's territory to find a special birthday gift for her, something that no one else will have seen before. It sounds insane to me, but apparently the princess is very hard to impress. If they want a good relationship with the royal family, then they'll have to do something extraordinary. And Bliss knows from her memories that another duke by the name of Kramer will do awful things if he gets his hands on that territory. That means Lucas has to get there first. Castile shoots the proposal down in an instant, so Bliss flies across the table, trying to convince him to reconsider, by rubbing up against his arm. A slightly unorthodox persuasion tactic, but at least it gets his attention. Shockingly, it's Lucas who correctly interprets her actions for once and tells his captain not to be so brazen with Sir Carden. Bliss tries to use what few words she has to tell him she agrees with Carden, but it just comes out as more nonsense. At this point, I can't wait for her to grow up and learn to speak properly, because this is starting to annoy me now as well. The Duke just thinks she's calling him a great father, but it doesn't matter if he doesn't totally get what she's saying. I don't know if he's an expert in speaking baby language or just clever enough to use the moment to his advantage, but somehow Sir Carden understands her and brings the conversation back to Rohan's territory. The others are pretty certain baby Eleanor has no idea what's going on, because under normal circumstances, no child her age would be able to keep up with demon politics. But Lucas decides to test their theories and get his princess a paper and pen. Wait, seriously? That's his plan? This guy must be dumber than I thought. What kind of baby can write but not speak? Bliss does her best to write the truth, that Rohan's territory will bring them fortune and royal favor. It is therefore imperative that they gain that land in order for both the Duke and her to succeed. She manages to write some very scribbly letters on the parchment, which totally bowls over her adoptive father and his soldiers. They have no idea how a baby learned to write, let alone recognize letters, and suddenly, Bliss realizes her mistake. It will surely raise a lot of dangerous questions if she suddenly shows that she's capable of writing, so it's time to do what she does best. That's right, Baby Bliss is playing cute. They love it so much that they use a spell to effectively take a picture. Lucas even orders him to keep taking cute pictures of his daughter whenever the moment arises. Jeez, she has them totally wrapped around her finger. When they finally get back to the issue at hand, Castile tells the baby he isn't convinced just because she can write. She keeps trying to communicate with them and coming up short, so they summon Marcia in hopes that she might understand the princess a little better. But Marcia's arrival isn't any use either, so instead they bring a little boy by the name of Tharoka in to see her. He introduces himself directly to Bliss, which is kind of adorable. Tharoka, or Theo, is one of the orphans from the dormitory and has acquired a reputation as a leader among the other children. Bliss remembers him too. When they grow up, all the orphans abandon Lucas, which is hardly a surprise considering he's literally training them to be child soldiers. All the orphans, except Theo. He stayed loyal and protected the Duke himself on the battlefield. Castile explains to the boy that they've summoned him to follow the young princess's orders. I don't know how they're expecting a boy to be able to understand a baby just because they're closer in age. Bliss starts speaking freely, and the others ask Theo to interpret. He says the princess is happy to have someone understand her, which is absolutely not what she said at all. I guess this kid is just saying anything so long as to make Lucas happy. But Bliss then makes a comment about how stupid the others are, and Theo quietly laughs. Maybe he can understand her after all? Just in case, Bliss tries to explain it all in one go, and to her total shock, he gets it and communicates it back to the adults in great detail. She realizes he must have the communication ability, a talent which enables him to talk to creatures and beings with no power to speak for themselves. But isn't that going to be kind of a problem for her? If this kid is around and hears her babbling something about her true identity, she's going to have to be careful from now on. Deciding to make use of his talent, Bliss tells him directly that he should come and see her often, hoping to make him her very own subordinate. Custeel, as usual, seems to have suspicion in his blood and doubts that Theo is telling the truth. Lucas, too, doesn't believe him. In his speech about Rohan's territory, he mentioned dwarves with great skill in combat. Lucas and everyone else in the realm at that time believed dwarves to be extinct, so naturally, he thinks the boy is lying. Apparently, there was some horrific thing known as the racial eradication policy when the emperor from the previous century imprisoned and tried to extinguish the entire race of dwarves. What the others don't know yet is that there were a few who survived and ended up in Rohan's territory. Looks like it's going to be up to Bliss to save her new interpreter from her father's wrath. This poor girl must be exhausted. In the end, Theo speaks out for himself. He is determined to prove himself to the Duke, so he suggests they bring in an animal or another child for him to translate. But in the end, he says the most important thing is to have faith in the princess and everything she says. Bliss is delighted to have someone not only to understand her, but to stand up for her. She crawls over to him for a hug, which is totally adorable. She likes him so much, she asks him to take her for a walk in the gardens. Her #1 fan, Custeel, butts in to play with her while she's being all cute, disrupting her attempt to get Theo on her side. Being the jealous father that he is, Lucas gives him the evil eye for getting snuggly with his daughter. Bear in mind, it was only a few chapters ago that these two were accusing Bliss of being a spy and threatening to kill her. Amazing what some cute looks and baby language can do to grown men. Knowing that Theo will hear her, Bliss tells him to stop fighting since she loves her dad the most anyway. When Theo reports back, the Duke immediately gives him the green light, just like his daughter knew he would. This is already proving to be a great tool for Bliss. No longer will she have to coddle everyone to get her way. Now she effectively has a human microphone. Things are going to get a lot easier. However, when Theo also relays that Eleanor asked to go on a walk with him, he thinks she basically asked him on a date. She's literally 2 years old, man. Give it a rest. Lucas says no, literally over his dead body. Bliss tries to tell him through Theo that that's obviously not what she meant, but it's no use. So she switches tactics. If he doesn't let them go on a walk, she swears never to call him Papa for the rest of her life. Yes, atta girl, that's the way to get to him. The great Duke Brant caves upon hearing that, so the two of them finally get some alone time. Initially, Bliss thanks Theo for translating and asks him if he's exhausted after dealing with dumb adults. The poor kid is probably shocked to hear her talking that way about some of the most elite warriors in the demon army. But more than that, he's grateful. He feels indebted to the Duke for taking him in and raising him when he had nowhere else to turn. But it's not like it's for free. After all, if he fails to be of use to the army, he might be killed. And the lifestyle isn't easy, but Theo says he likes it. It means he can pay back as much as he's given. I don't know about that, honestly. He's just a kid, and he's clearly been brainwashed to think being a child soldier is something honorable. It's messed up if you ask me. But now his prospects have improved even more. As the princess's translator, he's found another way to be useful that's slightly less dangerous. Well, so long as the Duke doesn't think he's dating his daughter. And apparently the Duke is still suspicious, because he, Warren, and Custeel follow them into the gardens to eavesdrop. But they also came to deliver the good news. A contingent has been approved to go to Rohan's territory, just like she wanted. Woohoo! Is it too early to say Eleanor for president? Plus, he's appointed Theo as her personal assistant so that he can both translate for her and protect her from harm. Delighted to be useful, Theo swears to protect the princess with his life and do everything he can to serve both her and her father. Well, looks like everyone's situations just got significantly better, and it's all thanks to Bliss. A few days later, Theo and Bliss are in the garden together eating shaved ice. They're already the best of friends, though that is very much because the princess wants it that way. She's determined to win him over no matter what it takes, and so far, that has included stuffing him full of any dish he takes a liking to. They do say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, after all. She's even given him a room in the estate right next to hers. After the miserable orphanage food and bedding, it must feel like paradise to him. While they're chatting, Barbacha comes running up to join them, eager to say hi to baby Eleanor. She seems to have relaxed a lot more because Bliss is bold enough to tell Baba to get out of her sight and stop being so nosy, which poor Theo has to translate into something slightly more polite. Actually, Baba is on his way to the dormitory because he's in charge of today's training. Bliss doesn't care at all about the kids' training, but she seems to have an ulterior motive. She puts on her cutest little expression and asks Baba if she can come with. So of course, he says yes. Since it's only going to be the kids who've already had training, Bliss thinks she can find a way to use them to her advantage. But when they arrive at the dormitory, they're in for a sobering sight. It's way worse than she expected. What is that evil dude doing with all his money while all these kids are just rotting here? The more I found out about this guy, the less I like him. They walk in on the kids having some kind of crisis. One of the girls seem to be unwell, and they're worried about being discovered. It's unfortunate that Barbacha walks in right then and sees the girl passed out on the floor, clearly with some kind of fever. It looks pretty serious. Her chest is swollen and her neck is all red. One of the kids suggests that the soup at lunch had a poisonous mushroom in it, and that she'll be fine if they just get the antidote. Barbacha thinks they're lying and warns them that if anyone is caught, they'll be kicked out too. Which is a pretty mean thing to say when there's a kid passed out on the floor. What happened to the sweet idiot who always plays with Eleanor? Theo tells her that this sort of thing happens a lot. If kids don't get better, no matter what the illness is, they'll be kicked out of the suburbs. And even life here is better than that. He takes her to the ill girl, where Bliss recognizes the symptoms of poisoning. But it's not from lunch. She notices a set of mushrooms in her pocket that are famous for making you stronger, if only you can endure the poison. You'd have to be pretty hardcore to do that yourself, especially as a kid. It's clear the other kids knew too, and are only covering for her. If they have any chance of surviving, then they have to do it together. None of them want to be sent back where they came from. Bliss needs to think fast. She has healing magic and might be able to save the girl using it. But it will draw a lot of suspicion if they discover that such a young child can use abilities like that. She's still on the fence when the girl suddenly grabs her and begs to be saved. And then she really doesn't have a choice. You can't suddenly turn around and ignore her after that. So Bliss reaches over and very quietly gives her just a bit of her healing energy. Barbacha is still talking to the other kids, but Theo sees it all. Luckily, she is successful and the girl wakes up feeling right as rain. Then, she gets Theo to tell Barbacha on her behalf not to bully any of the healthy kids or else she'll tell her dad. Kind of a bold move considering they all saw her literally struggling for breath on the floor just moments ago, but that's our girl Bliss. She's not got much, but she sure has guts. She also tells him to clean the dorm up and feed the kids better food, or else she won't like him anymore. You might think a trained member of the Duke's own personal guard wouldn't be so easily swayed by a toddler, but then a lot of absurd stuff has happened since Bliss showed up. That evening at playtime, the princess is a little weirded out. Theo watched her literally perform magic on a dying kid to save them, but he hasn't mentioned anything. She's kind of worried that his loyalty to Lucas will emerge, and he'll tell the Duke what happened. Things are kind of awkward between them. Theo looks like he's about to say something when suddenly the Duke, Barbacha, and Michaela all barge into her room. Lucas is mad that his subordinate brought her to the dormitory, which seems fair. It's not exactly the kind of place you'd take a kid, even though it was built for kids. But he's also mad at Theo for not stopping her. His duty is explicitly to look after her, and yet he took her somewhere dangerous. So of course, the boy apologizes right away. It looks like Lucas is hell-bent on punishing innocent people, so once again, Bliss has to step in. She commands Theo to repeat her words exactly. Then she tells her dad that she was very pleased with the dorm and wants to go visit more often? Oh wait, I'm so confused. Isn't that the exact opposite of what she told Barbacha? For once, her dad puts his foot down and tells her not to be stubborn. So she ups the ante and tries to charm him instead. She says she liked it so much that she wants to live there. Since it's something her father made, how could she not love it after all? I have no idea why that works, but it does. But obviously, they're going to keep all the bells and whistles of her princess life. Michaela is tasked with moving and setting up a gorgeous room just for her. I see where this is going. Bliss is hoping that by being in the dormitory, she'll force her dad to start taking better care of the orphans who she's living with. At least, that's what she's thinking, until Lucas announces that he'll move there too. Oh dear, I have a feeling this is about to go horribly wrong. In the end, she cuts a deal to live by herself in the dormitory, but only for a week. They quickly set up a gorgeous bedroom for her and agree to leave her with the other kids with no interruptions for the whole week. Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. From the first day, she's already achieved half of what she's hoping. Just by living in the dormitory, it's been completely cleaned. The kids are allowed to sleep in comfortable beds and eat good food, and they all know who to thank for this lovely new life. A few days later, the dormitory are gathered for dinner with Eleanor at the head of the table. She tells them to relax now that she's worked hard to bring them such nice food, and that they should enjoy the time they have together. Among the kids is Zelian, the girl whose life she saved. She's even brought a gift to thank her. It's very shiny, but what is that? It turns out to be no less than a dragon egg. How the heck did an orphan kid end up with one of those? Couldn't she have sold it and become a millionaire by now? This girl clearly has no idea what she's offering up, and Bliss isn't about to tell her. But amid all the celebration, there's one kid who doesn't seem so grateful. At the end of the table, one of the boys can see through her act. He tells the others not to get used to this treatment. It's only around for as long as Eleanor is, and she'll be gone in a week. Actually, he might have a point, but he doesn't have to be so moody about it. The kid's name is Alex. He came from a noble family that fell into ruin, so he's not so easy to impress. The other kids try to shut him up, even though Eleanor isn't bothered. She just tells them all to ignore him and enjoy their food. But then Alex gets up and starts yelling at her. He can't stand the fact that she got lucky and says she's no different than one of them. Theo steps in between them, so Alex turns on him next and tells him to stop bossing everyone around. Poor kid really has beef with everyone, huh? Instead of rising to his taunts, Eleanor tells him to shut up and have chocolate. No, literally. She gets a chocolate out of her bag and offers it to him. Alex is way too moody to accept it, so he kind of just storms off. Although, I'm sure that isn't the last we've seen of him. Meanwhile, the Duke has been going over his daughter's writing time and time again. It seems like he just misses her, but there's something nagging at him about this letter. So they call Custiel in to consult him, and he arrives in what I can only describe as Scrooge McDuck if he's slayed. Seriously, it's like a nightgown covered with little chicks, complete with slippers. It's kind of amazing if you ask me. They show the letter to Custiel, who is pretty shocked. Her handwriting has improved a lot since last time. She wrote an entire inventory of things in the dormitory that need fixing, and then sent them to her father for attention. She never rests, does she? As head manager of the dorm, they ask Custiel for an update on how the situation is evolving. He's happy to report back that the kids are actually way more productive these days. Who knew that if you treat people nicely, feed them, and give them enough sleep, they actually work better? Crazy, right? Back at the dormitory, Theo seems to have been feeling neglected after the princess offered chocolates and lovely food to all the other orphans. To make sure he feels valued, Eleanor offers him a whole box of chocolates just for him, thanking her assistant for all his hard work. She promises to keep showering him with everything she can and tells him to stay by her side until she can give him better things. It's pretty clearly bribery, but the kid deserves it. He must have a hard time trying to translate Bliss's rude remarks into something that won't get him beat up all the time. After the success of the dormitory, Eleanor eases into palace life and is introduced to the world as the princess daughter of Duke Lucas Brandt. It's quite the change from where she started, just a baby left in a basket at the gates. Now she's a little more grown up, and though she is able to speak for herself, Theo stays by her side as her personal escort all the same. After being formally announced, Eleanor is overwhelmed with presents. Yet more perks to being the daughter of one of the most feared dukes in the empire, and at this point, I have to bring it up again. Is she still planning to get revenge when she grows up? Because they've been pretty nice to her this whole time. I know they're gonna end the world or whatever, but you have to admit, they've given her a sweet life so far. Eleanor is watching carriages roll into the estate with Theo, announcing the arrival of Count Carlos Havadin. He's brought along his daughter, who is about the same age as Eleanor, and also really cute. Look at that little beret! Her name is Joanna, and he's hoping she can become friends with the princess. Kinda sounds like he's using his daughter to buddy up with the Duke to me, but whatever. The Sword of the Black Sea gather as usual to coo and awe over Eleanor, who is dressed up for the arrival of the Emperor's messenger. She needs to be involved in all the upcoming conversations, since Queen Reina's birthday is coming soon, and it's vital they get on her good side. However, Gilbert the messenger seems to be having a little trouble maintaining the Duke's interest. As usual, he's far too occupied with the daughter on his lap. He even interrupts the messenger to ask Custiel to find something pretty for her hair. Stay focused, Lucas. You do actually have a job, you know. In an effort to draw his attention, Gilbert the messenger suggests a ribbon, a big pretty bow for the princess, who looks pretty disappointed that the only other adult in the room just caved. The Duke obviously loves it. He even gives Gilbert a rare smile. Maybe the third one we've seen this entire series. He really is just a girly pop at heart. He orders Custeel to bring out every single ribbon they own and gets completely sidetracked trying to pick out a cute little bow. In fact, he gets so sidetracked that he tells the messenger to buzz off. Princess Eleanor is clearly more of a priority than establishing relations with the royal family. Eleanor, of course, is thoroughly peeved that she's being forced to play dress-up while her adoptive father is ignoring their political position. She slumps in her bedroom, locking her door and ordering Theo not to open it for anyone, not even her father. It seems this is another mess she's going to have to clean up herself. But with the Duke being so protective, how will she ever sneak out? Just then, almost as if he can read her mind, Theo assures her that he will help with whatever task she requires and accompany her along the way. That's the second time he's done that. Are we sure this kid can actually read minds? I wouldn't be surprised. Eleanor is touched by his dedication, but considering the lengths her father would go to keep her safe, it's probably not the best idea to ask him to come through on that promise. But it is a blessing to have him around, especially when her father's knights are all just as princess-obsessed as he is. Some days it seems like the only grown-up in this palace are the two kids. Finally, the Duke manages to kick down the door and immediately has Custeel and Warren grab Theo. Eleanor finally loses it and orders them all out, once again trapping her dad outside like a stray cat. So instead, he breaks in while she's asleep, which is not particularly cool. Has Duke Lucas Brant ever heard of privacy? While he and Custeel are watching her sleep like total creeps, Eleanor has a nightmare and starts crying in her sleep. Little does he know that his sweet princess daughter is dreaming of her past life as Bliss. She remembers a horrible beast coming into her home and murdering her family. She remembers someone giving their own life to save hers and how she was forever changed from that day. Just as she's remembering her final attack, her father picks her up to comfort her. Kind of twisted, isn't it? That this same man who caused all that chaos is now hugging her. The next morning, she isn't the same cheerful Eleanor as usual. She's struggling to understand how both Lucas the Father and Lucas the Destroyer of Worlds can be the same person. Her thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Bihan bursts through the door without knocking. Seems like the concept of privacy really doesn't exist in this kingdom. The Duke is right behind him with a whole team of doctors. Apparently, her little episode last night has convinced him that his daughter is going through puberty. Now, I'm not sure how much time we've skipped here, but that doesn't look like a teenager to me. Does anyone else think this guy is losing it? The doctors are probably thinking the same thing, but since there's a reward for whoever can cure the princess, they're not going to say a thing. When none of them steps forward, Custeel even pulls out a knife. So dramatic, this guy. Instead of giving into these very weird vibes, Lucas asks his daughter if she's hurt. When she says no, he seems relieved. For all his absurdities, he does really care about little Eleanor. But when they hug, it brings back all the memories of her dream last night, and the bliss hiding beneath can't hold it in. She pushes her dad away with her magic, totally stunning everyone in the room. Uh-oh, is this it? Has she finally pushed the limits this time? It kinda seems like she has. In a meeting that evening, Custeel brings up that name that we haven't heard in quite a while. Coreha. Even Warren seems suspicious. They both think she's been sent by this evil Coreha person. Eleanor is listening at the door, and when she hears this, she has no choice but to interrupt. She bursts into the room and pulls out the big guns. That's right, she calls him Papa. I don't know why that really gets this guy so much, but it does. He thinks it's so cute that he asks her to say it again. Eleanor spins some sob story about how she had a dream that he was hurt and got so scared that she ran straight here. After telling him he's the best dad ever, apparently everything is forgiven. I can't believe it's really that easy, but they do have other things to be getting on with, like running a country. At the next council meeting, Ellie takes pride of place, pointing out strategic points on a map of Rohan's territory. They want to give the princess something called the Golden Snake, but it's risky. Someone named Kroika is ruling the area in question. To avoid conflict, Eleanor draws them a route which will keep them undetected. It's decided that she should accompany the team in charge of finding the snake, so they put it to a vote to see who gets the privilege of accompanying her. She only wants Bihan to come with, since he's enough of an idiot that he won't question the suspicious amount of foresight she has on the area. Her dad is pretty devastated that he won't be going with, and while Ellie is packing for the trip, she overhears him fighting with Bihan outside. Before she even knows what's happening, the carriage she was supposed to be in has gone. Looks like her dad sent Bihan off without her. She goes running out to try and catch it, but her dad forces her to choose. It's him or Bihan. Damn, I didn't know this guy would be so salty about one little quest. He has the fragile ego of a child. Even his daughter is more mature than him. Eleanor refuses to play his silly games. All she says is that she has to go to Rohan, no matter who it's with or what it takes. He looks hella mad, but before either of them can start screaming, Theo pipes up. He starts stumbling over the words, clearly nervous to speak up in front of the Duke. But in the end, he tells his master that this was all part of a big plan to bring Lucas a gift from Rohan's territory. He says the princess has always wanted to express her gratitude and wanted to go with Bihan so it would be a surprise. Pretty quick thinking on his part. And as always, a little flattery is enough to have the Duke completely fooled. They stop the carriage before it leaves the grounds and find Bihan struggling with some kind of angry bird. Oh, and that kid Alex from the dormitory. Apparently, Bihan trained the kid himself, so he's really strong now. So now this unlikely foursome set off together. Theo, Eleanor, Bihan, Alex, and this very aggressive eagle. While passing through a town, Eleanor recognizes the sound of a famous band from her previous life, one who were very useful for obtaining information. They drove alongside the musicians, where Ellie drops a load of cash on them for no apparent reason. As it turns out, the band are known as the Long Nose, and their real business is kidnapping and selling the children of nobles. Whatever her plan is, it's interrupted when Eleanor's stomach suddenly grumbles like crazy. When they stop off at an inn that night, she has a, shall we say, a bit of a toilet disaster. Bihan runs out to find a doctor and leaves the boys in charge of her health. Theo is attentive as always, offering to do just about everything to make her feel better. But Alex the brat is enjoying a chance to tease her. As a matter of fact, he was the one who gave her a sandwich in the carriage before. I bet good money that it's his fault she's ended up like this. When Eleanor tries to leave the room, he slams the door in front of her and refuses to move, laughing at her. Obviously, Sweet Night Theo isn't gonna stand for that, but Alex moves straight over to grab his shirt. He calls Eleanor a fake princess and Theo an idiot for not being able to see the truth. Uh-oh, what has this kid found out? Something about the way he's speaking to Theo triggers his painful memories as an orphan. He suddenly swings a punch at Alex, landing a good hit before Alex strikes back even harder. They get into a scuffle on the floor, and while they're fighting, someone suddenly sneaks in through the window and kidnaps Ellie. Wow, great job, guys. You let your egos get so big that you forgot to do your actual jobs. They chase the kidnapper through the woods, but soon, Theo loses his strength. That potion the kidnapper threw in the window was sleeping gas, so he must have inhaled too much to run. That means it's up to Alex to get her back, and I have to admit, he's doing a pretty good job. That is, until the kidnapper holds her up as a shield against him, and she kind of, well, she blows chunks all over him. I can't really think of a nicer way to say that, honestly. In the middle of all this, Bihan has been scouring the town for just about every medicine he can find. He's about to head back when he's approached by an old friend, or should I say, an enemy? Back in the forest, Alex is almost catching up to the princess when he trips and grabs a fistful of the kidnapper's butt cheeks instead of Eleanor. They come to a halt, Eleanor on the floor and Alex still grabbing onto the poor criminal's trousers. Whoops! That's not exactly a dignifying position to end up in. Rightfully, the kidnapper slaps him, but their brief fight is over very quickly. The kidnapper raises his flute, but it's no match for Alex's sword. In moments, he is on his knees and defenseless. He lets the princess out of his grasp. Poor Theo has just about caught up by this point and is starting to feel really dejected. After so many years by the princess's side, he's missed out on his training. It should have been him saving Eleanor, but instead, it's Alex who has taken his place. I can't help but feel bad for the kid. He has no idea that in his other lives, he became the Duke's best and most loyal soldier. And it's all because of Ellie that he can't live up to his potential. Alex has his sword to the kidnapper's throat, but suddenly, a shot is fired. he turns around to find the two other members of the Longnose holding her captive. They force him to drop his sword, and in the split second that he's defenseless, the kidnapper grabs it and runs him through. Theo yells out, and suddenly, he is shot in the chest. Holy crap! What the heck is going on? A minute ago, everyone was fine, and now the princess's sidekicks are both bleeding out on the ground. Oh, Theo, I really hope he doesn't die. If there was ever a time for Bliss to come out and use the full extent of her powers, it would be now. So she raises her fist to the sky and summons a giant bolt of lightning. When the smoke clears, all the bandits are tied up with a magical glowing rope. As soon as they're taken care of, she runs over to her companions, who are looking seriously rough. She has them sit down while she uses her magic to heal them. That's when she notices that not only does Theo have a literal gunshot wound, but he also slashed himself with his sword to stay awake against the effects of the sleep draft. Wow, I really love this kid. I mean, I know that's a little extreme, but doesn't that just make your heart melt? Meanwhile, Alex is kind of terrified of the princess. She just used level 5 attack powers, and now she's healing him like it's no big deal. The kidnappers are starting to ask the same kind of questions, so Eleanor shuts them up with another zap of her lightning powers. That's it, girl. Show them who's boss. Oblivious to all of the insane stuff that just went down in the forest, Bihan is in a pub with that mysterious hooded figure. Her name is Karina, and she is some kind of wizard who seems very interested in the Duke's new heir. Apparently, there are some complicated magical laws surrounding the marriage of a human with a being like the Duke. So the announcement of the princess has raised a lot of eyebrows. The whole situation seems super fishy if you ask me. But the moment Karina says the princess must be cute, Bihan folds like a pack of cards and invites her back to see her. Though I'm not sure he'd still call her cute if he could see what she was up to right now. She's just forced the kidnappers into a binding magical contract that traps them as her slaves. If any of them break it, their soul will be literally destroyed. Talk about hardcore. She hasn't actually enforced a contract, but because they believe it, they'll come whenever she calls them in the future. Pretty smart for a 7-year-old. When she returns to the boys, she's surprised to find Alex crying. Not such an arrogant kid now, is he? As if all that wasn't enough for one evening, next, Eleanor's dragon egg starts glowing. I was wondering when that thing would come into play. Her giant lightning strike must have woken it up, but it wasn't enough to make the dragon hatch. The egg literally tells her that in her dream, right before asking for a kiss with a familiar face. Eleanor wakes up from that disturbing nightmare to find Bihan in bed beside her and immediately starts beating him with a pillow. Serves the dude right. Not only did he leave them to nearly get killed last night, but now he's trying to act all cute? I'd have him cut in half already. While he's literally half nude in bed with a child, gross, the boys turn up to serve them breakfast. Alex has had a total character glow-up after the events of last night. After Ellie made the promise not to tell Bihan what happened, Alex becomes totally loyal to her, and even agrees to move into the palace with her and Theo. And speaking of the palace, Lucas is missing his daughter so much that he's literally started drawing pictures of her. Seriously, how did this guy end up a duke? He's no less a baby than Ellie is. While missing his daughter in the palace grounds, one of the maids suddenly whips out a knife and tries to attack Lucas. Though, it's not like that could exactly stop someone as powerful as him. In literally seconds, he has her body frozen in air. And then he snaps her neck. Yeah, remember how I was saying I don't understand how he ended up a duke? I get it now. While the others are wandering through the market looking for a present for Lucas, Eleanor is approached by a little boy begging on the street. The memory of being in that same position in her past life is so strong that Eleanor can't ignore him. So she goes and buys a whole box of pastries and breads from the bakery and brings that over for him. Alex and Theo watch her in awe and make a comment about how much she resembles the Duke. Not really sure we've seen the Duke being particularly nice to orphans, considering he used to lock them up and starve them until Ellie came along. But Theo is starting to get suspicious as to why the princess hates being compared to her father so much. Alex tries to explain that the Duke has acted just like this and reveals that Marcia, the maid, was even saved by him. Eleanor is totally shocked. I guess she didn't think him capable of kindness, and honestly, I can understand why. Ellie is still having an existential crisis about whether her adopted father is really a villain or not. She's just walking back to the carriage when the orphan hands her a present as thanks for the bread. It's some kind of necklace and it looks valuable. At this point, I have to ask, what are all these starving orphans doing with super valuable magical items? Like, if you were starving, wouldn't the first thing you do would be to sell your expensive necklace or the dragon egg you've been hoarding for years? Ellie has to be the luckiest girl in the world to keep finding all this stuff. When they finally arrive in Rohan's territory, they are immediately attacked by a horde of goblins. Alex has no problem cutting them down, but it looks like Theo is struggling. Come on, though. You have to cut him some slack. He hasn't had half the training that Alex has in the last few years. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think? As always, don't forget to like the video and comment for the next part so we know you want more. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for updates. See you in the next one!